Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Theory Thursday. So every Thursday we get together and take a bit of a deep dive into one part of Blood Bowl. Whether it's tactics, strategy or just theory and maths. The whole point is we look at something to better understand it and maybe give us a chance to be slightly better Blood Bowl coaches. So one of the big changes in Blood Bowl 2020 is the way fan factor and dedicated fans has switched up. The way you buy dedicated fans now directly impacts how much cash you get after each game. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend a few minutes looking at dedicated fans and your winnings. So back in the before times, you bought your fan factor, you rolled at the beginning of the game, and you maybe got fame plus 1 or fame plus 2, which gave you an extra 10 or 20k at the end of the match. That was it. Now the way winnings work has changed, I think, significantly, and I'm a huge fan of this change, but it is a bit crunchy to figure out. So at the beginning of a game, you each roll a d3 and add your dedicated fans. That gives you the fan factor for the total of the match. So I'd roll a d3 and add 2, Ian would roll a d3 and add 3, and we total it together, and at the end of the match we would half that, times it by 10k, and that's how much we would win. It works great in theory, but it's really kind of right. We need to take a time to get our heads around just how this is going to work. We're going to look at averages, we're going to look at what influences it, and we're going to look at what the right amount of dedicated fans to buy is and what your return's going to be in 3 weeks and in 9 weeks, basically. The only other change that I think is really good is it's plus 10k per touchdown. So while you're thinking, man, this is going to hurt my dwarfs, this is going to hurt my Nurgle team, these teams that like to win a 1-0 grind. Yes, but those teams, I'm sure you'll know this from running leagues and from being in leagues, tend to end up with all the cash. Dwarves just don't die. I'm sorry, unless you're an Edge 4 dwarf with Leap who's asking for it. James, great player though, great player. I miss that guy. You know, they don't die, so you don't have to buy anything. Elf teams, Skaven teams, teams that like to put the bowl in Blood Bowl, they die in droves. So the way to kind of compensate is to add that 10k per touchdown. So dwarves are going to earn less money, but they're going to need to spend less money. Elves, pro elves especially, and Slan apparently, are going to need to spend that cash to keep their players alive. So it adds a kind of middle ground. It means that there's an element there that actually, okay, I need to come out of this game with 60k. I know what the fan factor is at the beginning of the game. I need to score 4 touchdowns here to get an extra 40k so I can afford to buy another gutter runner going into the finals. It's just something, you kind of got that awareness before the game itself. I was not a fan of the random earnings from Blood Bowl 2016. I personally think it was the worst rule in there. Play the game for 2.5 hours, lose people, and then roll a dice and see how much money you want. What? No! I just got murdered and then I rolled a 1 and I hate this game. That is basically how they used to play. In fact, we actually went through a season of Wobble, our local league, where we had a kind of, it was basically an averaging mechanic that you did your fan factor and that's how much money you got, which is very similar to this. So I am a big fan. Let's have a look and see how it works. So at the beginning of a league, you can choose to buy extra dedicated fans. You start with 1. Every team starts with 1 dedicated fan for free, and then you can boost it up to dedicated fans of 6 in increments of 10k. So we've got here the cost versus income. So if you wanted to upgrade your team to have 3 dedicated fans, it would cost you 20k at team production, and every single game you would get a bonus of 15,000. So we're going to average this out, okay? We are going to say that every 1 fan factor you got, every 1 dedicated fans you've got, is essentially equal to 5k out on the back end, okay? Your D3, their D3, doesn't matter. What happens if you add your dedicated fans to that role, they add their dedicated fans to their role, and you halve it. So if you've got 6 dedicated fans, whatever happens, you are going to be adding 30k to your winnings and your opponent's winnings. It is that simple. There's going to be a die roll element as well, and you can get bonuses from touchdowns. But if you fork 50k out at the beginning of your league to get to dedicated fans 6, that very first game you are going to net an extra 30k income. because you're adding your dedicated fans to the standard die roll. So we're going to look at the die roll here. We're going to ignore dedicated fans for this moment because we need to find the floor. We need to find the benchmark. You've got a D3 roll, they've got a D3 roll. What's the average going to be? You guys will know that the average of rolling 2 D3s is going to result in a 4. You are halving that and timesing it by 10, so you will know by now that the average income for both teams before dedicated fans, this is just off the die roll, is going to be 20k. Okay, there's an 11% chance of it being 10k, and there's an 11% chance of it being 30k. But you have got a chunk of chance that it's going to be 20k or more, and more often than not it's going to be 20k. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to kind of assume that 20k is your average roll, so that's what it's going to be. Now this is both teams at dedicated fan 0. There is no such thing as dedicated fan 0. This chart here is just to kind of point out that you roll the dice, your opponent rolls the dice, you get that number, and then what you add to that is your fan factor, is your dedicated fans and their dedicated fans. You add them together, you cut them in half, and that's your bonus to share. Okay, you both get that bonus. So if I've got dedicated fans 2, you've got dedicated fans 2, we're both gonna get an extra 20k on the back end of that, because you're gonna have an extra 4 dedicated fans, which is gonna add to this, and you're gonna be absolutely rolling in it. So we've already established that the more dedicated fans you have, just the more money you get. It's halved. A half times 10, or for every dedicated fan you get 5k basically at the end of the match. Added to the same that you get from your opponent's dedicated fans, it's the total of the entire match. So if you've got 6 dedicated fans and your opponent's got 6 dedicated fans, you're getting 60k plus that die roll at the beginning. So you're likely to get 80k on that one. However, the most important thing about dedicated fans is that you win them and you lose them depending on the match. And this is the crux. This is the most important thing to consider. You can spend 50k boosting all the way up to DF6, but is that 50k spent better promoting linemen to positionals to allow you to win more? Because there's no point running a team that's going to lose and take more dedicated fans, because you are going to lose games, and when you lose a game you have a chance to lose a fan factor, and this is what this is here. So we've got the fan factors on the left, we've got the chances of plussing it and the chances of minusing it. So DF1, okay, that's free. You've paid no money. You have got a 100% chance of leveling up to DF2 on a win, and you can't lose. Okay, so DF1 is a free ball. If you win one game, you go straight to DF2. You've net that gain of 10k. DF2 has got an 83% chance of going up. Basically, you have to roll a die. If you win the game, get equal to or better than your DF, you level up. If you lose the game, you have to basically roll under your DF, and if you do, you lose a point. Okay, so you're always trying to equal or better your DF. If you've lost the game and you don't succeed, you lose a fan factor. If you win the game and you do succeed, you gain a fan factor. So what we really have to consider here is the chances of you losing the fan factor that you've paid for at the beginning, and really balancing that versus, do I take my 4th blitzer, or do I take that 30k and put it into fan factor? Well, if you're going to lose the games, you're going to lose that dedicated fans. So DF2, 83% chance of going up, DF3, 67% chance of going up, and you can see that the chances of dropping those fan factor are significantly less. If you are at dedicated fans 2, you need to roll a 1 to lose it. Okay, yeah, it's going to happen every now and again, but your odds are that you're all right. And the same here at DF3, dedicated fans 3. You've got a 2 out of 3 chance of leveling up if you win, and you've got a 1 out of 3 chance of dropping 1 if you lose. Those are pretty good odds. And this is where it breaks even. Dedicated fans 4. 1, 2, 3, you lose a fan factor. And if you win a game, 4, 5, 6, you gain a fan factor. So that is the absolute break even point. I think most things are going to level out at DF4. I'll come to that in a minute. DF5, you've only got a 33% chance of leveling up if you win a game, and you've got a 67% chance of losing your fan factor if you lose the game. And it gets even worse at DF6. So if you spend 50k to upgrade to dedicated fan 6 and you don't win that first game, you're bumping down to 5. And if you go for 5 and you lose that game, you're probably dumping down to 4. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at some scenarios. We are going to take 3 game stretches, apply that to each of the dedicated fans level, and find out where you end up, how much money you've made, and whether you've net gained or net lost your dedicated fan. Now, we are doing this in 3 game batches essentially, because we are going to assume that you are an average player. We are going to make 2 assumptions. One is that you win a game, lose a game, and draw a game in the same 3 game window, and that you have an average of 1 touchdown per game. So the whole idea here is you score 0 touchdowns one game and lose it, you score 1 touchdown in your second game and draw, and you score 2 touchdowns in your third game and win. Okay, and we are going to do that because we want to look at the dedicated fans levels, and basically in each 3 game period, where are you going to end up? So I've stretched the stats ever so slightly, because if you lose a game first, then it changes the outcome than if you win a game first. So we're just going to treat them as if you are winning a game, losing a game, and drawing a game all in one go. So we're going to start out here with dedicated fans 1. So you pay absolutely nothing for this. You've filled your team with whatever, you've kept the rest of the cash in the treasury, no problem at all. Winnings, you are going to get 30k per game. We've seen that on the last slide, so that is basically an average of 20k off the die roll, and then 10k from both players having dedicated fans 1. So for all of these slides, we are going to also assume that your opponent has dedicated fans 1. If they have more than 1 dedicated fan, that is literally just profit for you. You can't control that. What you can do is use these to gauge about where you're going to be. So dedicated fans 1. In a 3 game stretch where you win, lose and draw and score 3 touchdowns, you're going to get 30k per game, and you're going to get a bonus of 30k, 10k for each touchdown. So that's going to mean that in a 3 game stretch, you are going to, on average, win 120,000. That's not bad. That's a reroll for most teams. That's a positional if you want to level up. That's a third reroll for your Dark Elf team, or your Witch Elf. So you are going to end up paying 0 to boost your dedicated fans. Sorry, I'm going to do that a lot. And you're going to net gain 120k over 3 games. Also, and this is probably the most important thing, is there's a win in that, and there is a far more chance of you leveling up on your win than you are of dropping on your loss. And this is what I mean, we're going to have to use a bit of flexibility and a bit of forgiving here, is that if you win first, there is technically a 1 in 6 chance of you dropping down a fan factor, but if you look at the likelihood of those scores, the likelihood is you're going to gain a fan factor and not lose a fan factor. So after 3 games with dedicated fans 1, you're going to get 120k, and you're going to level up to dedicated fans 2. And for dedicated fans 2, it costs you 10k to buy in at this level, and you're going to win 35k a game. That's 20k from the die roll, 5k from your opponent, and 10k from you having 2 fan factor, 2 dedicated fans. So, and we'll say the same thing, win, draw, loss, 3 touchdowns. That's going to mean that over a course of 3 games with a 1-1-1 record, you're going to come in at 135k. So you are going to net gain 125k, so a little bit more. So you put 10k in, and you net gain 5k more than if you hadn't put that 10k in. So you get 135k out of it, and because the likelihood is here, again, that you are likely to go up if you win a game, and you're unlikely to go down if you lose a game, we are going to assume that you play 3 games, you earn 135k, you've spent 10k, and you've gone up to dedicated fans 3. And on dedicated fans 3, it costs you 20k to get there. Now you're earning 40k a game. 20 from the die roll, 5 from your opponent, and 15k for you. Plus 1 touchdown per game gives you an extra 30k, which means over the course of those 3 games you're going to get 150k. So this is the point at which you can buy your Croxagore for your Lizardman team. Okay, DF3 starting out at this level means that after 3 games you are probably going to be able to buy that Croxagore. Now, the good thing about Lizards, they're going to be scoring more than that, so you're going to be able to get there, but this is kind of helping you to gauge, if I have a very average season and I score 1 touchdown a game and I win 1 for every loss, where am I going to be? So you're going to net 150k at dedicated fans 3, and you are more likely to go up to dedicated fans 4 than you are to go down to dedicated fans 2. So if you buy at DF3, so that's 20k, if you buy 2 dedicated fans to get you to dedicated fans 3, you play 3 games, you win 1, you lose 1, you're probably going to end up getting to dedicated fans 4, and you're going to net 130k or 150k total. But this is where it starts to plateau. So DF4, if you go to dedicated fans 4, it's going to cost you 30k off the beginning of your roster. You're going to be winning 45k a game, 20 for the die roll, 5 for your opponent, and 20 for you. Okay, so obviously that can flex up. We're going to assume you get 3 touchdowns over a 3-game span as well. That means it's 165k after your first 3 games, and you're netting 135. So, going to be pretty obvious that the more you put in, the more you net total and the more you make. But the interesting thing about dedicated fans 4 is that you've got a 50% chance of losing your fan factor if you lose the game, and you've got a 50% chance of it going up if you win a game. So we are going to assume that if you start out at DF4 and you play 3 games, you are going to end up at DF4, because if you fail the roll and drop 1, you've then got a really good chance on your win to come back up, and if you win, you've got an average chance to go up as if you have got the loss. So we're going to assume that it kind of plateaus and averages out here. So you're going to start at DF4, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. You're going to end at DF4, you're going to net 135k and earn 165k total. So we've hit the plateau, and now we start to see a decline here. So dedicated fans 5, we're going deep. Cost you 40k off your starting 1 million. You're going to earn 50k a game. Okay, so 20 from the die roll, 5 for your opponent, and 25 from your team per game based on your dedicated fans. Again, we're going to assume 1 touchdown per game. That brings you 180k over the course of 3 games. So realistically, your average is going to be about 60k a game, which if you are a 2016 player, that sounds fantastic. And we're assuming that our opponent hasn't bought any fan factor at all, hasn't bought any dedicated fans. You're looking to earn quite a lot of money here for your team. But the downside is, if you win, lose and draw, there's a winner in us all. Wrong line. But on the dedicated fans point of view, you're more likely to lose a fan factor from dedicated fans 5 to go down to 4 than you are to go up to 6. So if you look at the kind of net input, whichever way you do it, if you win first, you ain't going up, and then if you lose, you are probably going down. And it's the other way round, is that if you go down, you are less likely to go up than you are to go down. So it balances out, and you'll probably end up at dedicated fans 4. So you put 40k into this, you end up at dedicated fans 4, but you've net 140k. So that's 5k more total after 3 games than if you put in dedicated fans 4. So this is the point at which it starts to be negligible gains if you were going to have an average record. But you can put 50k in right at the beginning to go straight to dedicated fans 6, and it's important to look at just how much cash you're going to get back from that. So 50k is going to buy you DF6, you're going to earn 55k a game, let's say 1 touchdown a game, you're going to net about 200k, 195k after 3 games. You are almost definitely going to drop down to DF5 in this situation. If you lose a game, you've got a 5 out of 6 chance of dropping 1. If you win a game, you're not going anywhere. So you basically, with a win, draw, loss, are going to drop down to DF5, and you're going to lose that value. You will net 145k, so there's that, and you're going to earn nearly 200k. Let's say you overperform and get more touchdowns than it is all winning, and all you need to do is draw. That's the most important lesson here with DF, is losing is bad, but drawing keeps you exactly the same. So if you just keep drawing at DF6, you are going to earn 200k every 3 games. Okay, that's an average of 60 to 65k a game, and you are going to be able to farm that cash. So if you are a dwarf team and you are very comfortable that you can draw most games, you can do this. You're going to net a ton of cash. Your DF might drop if you take a loss. No, that's not fair. Your DF is definitely going to drop basically. If you take a loss, you might get lucky, but you're still going to be netting a ton of cash here. But 3 games are of no use to anybody, I appreciate that. Leagues are longer, so we're going to have a quick summary here of a win-loss-draw 9-game stretch. Okay, so we're going to assume that in every 3 games you win 1, you draw 1, and you lose 1. So we're looking at the stats of those past batches, and we are applying them here. So if you start out with dedicated fans 1, and you have an average run, okay, win, loss, draw, whatever. After the first 3 games, you'll go up to DF2. After the second 3 games, so games 4 through 6, you'll end up at DF3, and if you continue to average yourself out, you're going to end up at dedicated fans 4 by game 9. So by putting in nothing, after 9 games, you're going to end up at DF4. If you go in at DF2, you're going to go up to DF3, then to DF4 in games 4 and 6, and end up probably staying around DF4. DF3, you're going to go up to DF4 after your first 3 games and probably stay there, statistically speaking. DF4, you go in at DF4 and you stay at DF4, okay? 50% chance of it dropping. Once you've dropped at 50%, you've got a 67% chance of boosting back up. So we're going to assume that those dice level out and you stay around DF4. DF5, if you buy in at DF5, within your first 3 games, basically at your first loss, you've got a really good chance of dropping to DF4. So we're going to assume that if you start at DF5, you're going to end up at DF4 by game 9. DF6, okay, let's say you spend the full 50k to buy all the dedicated fans you can. You know, you go full terrible towel, you give people freebies left, right and centre. You're going to start at DF6 and you're going to end up down at DF4 as well, because you're going to drop from the loss, you're going to drop from a loss again from DF5 to DF4, and you're going to end up at DF4. Now it's really interesting. So what will happen? Probably, obviously, everybody can roll hot or roll garbage. It's going to happen. But by the end of 8 or 9 games, most teams that are average are going to end up at DF4. DF3, DF4 maybe. So if you are a good team and you're confident of wins, you will get more chances to develop. You will develop much, much faster. So if you are a team that can score good amount of touchdowns to get that bonus cash, and you're confident you can win games, maybe 2 out of every 3 games, starting with a lower fan factor is not going to hurt you at all. 1 touchdown per game is equal to 2 dedicated fans. So when you are building that team, do I want to put that 40k into dedicated fans? Or do I want to spend that 40k and buy my second thrower? Buy my 4th blitzer? You know, do I want to give myself these options to help me win games? Yes, you do. I love the idea of the dedicated fans system, and I like the way you can buy in, and if you draw or win, then you stay solid and you just keep farming the cash. But you can start down here and end up here in a very short amount of games. DF2, DF3 are really good places to buy in, but if you don't want to buy dedicated fans, it's going to be a little bit of a grind. But if you can make up with touchdowns, you're going to be there. So basically the difference here between DF1 and DF2 ends out being 15k over 3 games. So if you are confident that you can spend that 10,000 and score 2 touchdowns more because of it in 3 games, you're netting value. And lastly, we've got a bit of a summary here. So after 9 games, DF1, DF2, DF3, DF4, DF5 and DF6, if you're playing a win-loss draw every 3 games, are all going to end up at DF4 basically. So after 9 games, Dedicated Fans 1 is going to have won 405k. Dedicated Fans 2 is going to win 450k. Dedicated Fans 3, 480. Dedicated Fans 4, 495. Dedicated Fans 5, 510. And Dedicated Fans 6, 540. So you can also use this to gauge, if I have an average season, how much money do I want to go through, okay? And you've got net winnings here as well, so if you do go all in on DF6, you're going to net 490k, whereas if you pay nothing, you are going to net 400k. So if you want to be earning lots of money, DF is going to give you more overall. But like I said, it's not worth costing yourself touchdowns and games, okay? Because a touchdown is going to be the difference between a draw and a loss. And that's what you want to avoid. So if you are buying DF, you need to make sure that you can draw and not lose. Because if you buy and you lose, you just come up and you've given up equity. It's much better to buy the better players to give you a chance to draw and not lose your DF, or to win and gain free DF, than it is to go all in on DF because you want to farm cash. You are going to farm cash, but what you're going to do is you're just going to drop up here. And then that money you've paid up should be in a player, and it isn't. And I guess that's the other thing that I really want to drive home here. We'll come to a summary in a second, but let's take a Skaven Blitzer, okay? Skaven Lineman is 50k, Skaven Blitzer is 90k. When you are building your roster, that Blitzer only costs you 40k more than a lineman. Okay, so you can drop a blitzer down to a lineman and spend that cash in dedicated fans, but you will then need to pay 90,000 to buy a whole blitzer, when during team creation you are simply upgrading linemen. That's how teams work. You start with 11 linemen and then you can upgrade or downgrade them to different positionals on your team. That is a standard cost. You start at 550 with 11 linemen, and for 40k you get to upgrade one of them to a blitzer. If you don't do that, it's not going to cost you 40k, it's going to cost you 90k later. And that is why I believe in front loading. However, from an equal point of view, hitting DF4 is probably ideal. I am going to look to start at DF3 because I'm confident that I can get 1 or 2 wins in my first 3 games and get to DF4. But DF4 is around about where you're going to end up. DF3, DF4, you're going to end up with 480k. And this, guys, this is all with your opponent having no dedicated fans at all. If you assume that they're going to be hitting dedicated 2, dedicated 3, then you can add basically an extra 10k to every one of your games. And that's when you start that kind of reciprocal motion in your league. And it kind of gives you an idea. So if you enter a league where everyone's running 4 or 5 DF, maybe don't bother, because you're just going to be free rolled an extra 20 to 30k per match that you can use, and you can spend that initial cash in your players. So DF and winnings is really interesting, and it is going to balance out. And you can see here that if you are an average player having an average season, you're going to end up at probably about DF3, DF4, and this is the kind of money that you're going to be making, which is massive compared to how it used to be. This is going to average out at about 50k a game potentially. Okay, 20k from the die roll. Say you've each got 2 dedicated fans, that's another 20k, and you should be able to score 1 touchdown per game. That's 50k easy. If you go bigger, it's going to be more, but you are paying your opponent at that point. It only starts being real sweet if you say, if you've both got DF3, that it's an extra 30k a game. If you've got DF3 and they've got DF1, you're losing equity. There's nothing you can do about that. So plan for them to have DF1, buy in at a level where you're happy with. Okay, this is average. If you want to end up at a 1.5 million team, go in at DF5 and be prepared to win, but that's going to cost you 40k to get there. Anyway, thank you for paying attention to maths and winnings and dedicated fans in Blood Bowl. I know it's not the most exciting thing. This is just pure league and team management, but it's good to get a gauge of how much cash you're going to be winning per game. 40 to 50k plus touchdowns. That's pretty sweet. On the downside, it's going to be 30 to 40k plus touchdowns. 1, 2 touchdowns a game, you're up there 50, 60. You're buying an elf every other match. 3 out of 4 matches you've got an elf back in there, which is beautiful, and that's really going to help your team stay alive. We should probably take a look at casualties and the kind of the upkeep cost of teams, but 9 games is probably about a standard season. I think we normally run 8 games plus a playoff, so yeah, probably 9, 10 games. This is where you're going to be. Anyway, thanks ever so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts and please ask questions. And I know there's a few of you out there who are beautiful people and help me correct my maths. So please chuck the comments in because I'm intrigued. But this was useful for me to go through to get my head around kind of how much the earnings are going to be. And you know what? The heuristic here is DF4 is DF forever, and you're going to win about 40k a game. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.